You approached me because of the blood debt, didn't you? I snapped. Damian didn't flinch. At first, yes. Security alarm screamed. Vincent burst through the door. Perimeter breach! They found the villa. The house plunged into darkness, the air thick with the acrid sting of burnt wiring. I yanked the curtain aside. Down the slope, red beams and helmets flickered like the eyes of predators. Damian tore a painting off the wall, unlocked a hidden safe. Inside, a black hard drive and a stack of Baja cartel files, the key to every crime, and our death sentence if they got it. Choose, Maya, he said, blood streaking his side. Call the police and watch them crush me, or burn it, and leave with me. I swear. No more secrets. The glass doors exploded. A shadow lunged in. Instinct took over. I grabbed a letter opener, parried the first strike, slammed him into the wine rack. Damian fired once. The metallic echo shook the room. Gunpowder mingled with rain, my pulse drumming like thunder. Through the wind's howl, the black drive pulsed under the flickering light like a synthetic heart. Outside, they shouted in Italian. Apri! Consegnati! Open up. Surrender. I lifted the lighter, flame trembling before the papers. You said you loved me, I whispered, eyes locked on the soldiers closing in. Then let me decide how we survive. I struck the flame. The papers caught. Truth hissing as it burned. I glanced at Damian. Hold my hand. Now. As fire crawled up the edge of the safe, I pulled the smoke alarm trigger and dropped the steel shutters, choosing darkness, to open our way to freedom. March 2024. The sweltering heat of Los Angeles seemed to never let me go. Manhattan Beach, where I was standing, bore a false glamour, a glossy coat of paint covering tired souls and shattered dreams. I am Maya Rinaldi, a beautiful waitress with a tattered soul, an Italian-American whose heart still bore scars from fleeing a toxic relationship in Atlanta. Each shift was an endurance, a test of my resilience. The clinking of glasses, the noisy laughter of customers, the urgent calls for orders from the kitchen, all blended into a symphony of exhaustion. I tried to smile, tried to maintain a professional demeanor, but deep inside, I felt like I was about to shatter. Tonight, everything seemed heavier. I had worked continuously for 12 hours, my feet aching, my back sore. Damian's restaurant, where I worked, was a luxurious but also harsh place. Damian Voss, its owner, was a powerful phantom. He rarely appeared, but his presence seemed to permeate every corner of the restaurant. People rumored about him, about the underground empire he ran, about his cold eyes that could see through everything. I had never spoken directly to him, only glimpsed him passing by a couple of times, his gaze sweeping over me like an inanimate object. My phone vibrated in my apron pocket, startling me. It was Aunt Lena's number. I knew immediately something was wrong. Aunt Lena never called at this hour, unless something was truly serious. My heart tightened. A feeling of dread surged. I asked the manager for permission and rushed to a secluded corner, where there were fewest people, to answer the phone. As soon as I picked up, Aunt Lena choked out, Maya, Grandma. She's very weak. Doctor said. They don't know how much longer she has. My whole world seemed to collapse. Grandma, the woman who raised me, who taught me Italian, who kept the flame of family culture burning brightly in my soul. She was all I had left, the only connection to a peaceful past before everything became chaotic. I felt my chest constrict. Tears welled up, hot on my cheeks. Without a second thought, I began speaking to Aunt Lena in Italian, the instinctive language that had been with me since childhood. Aunt Lena, what are you saying? Grandma? No, Auntie. No. I have to go home. I have to go home right now, I said, my voice choked, Italian phrases bursting out unconsciously, full of sorrow and despair. I can't let her go alone. I have to see her one last time. I have to tell her how much I love her. I didn't realize that Damian Voss's gaze was fixed on me. He stood there, just a few meters from me, hidden behind a large potted plant. I didn't know how long he had been standing there, or how much he had heard. In that moment, I only knew the heartbreaking pain, the image of my grandmother lying weakly in a hospital bed, in a distant country that I didn't have enough money to return to. When I hung up, the world around me continued to spin, but I felt like I was sinking into an endless abyss. I returned to my station, trying to serve customers with a fake smile, but my hands were still trembling, and the corners of my eyes were still wet. I felt a gaze following me, a cold sensation running down my spine. I looked up, and this time, I met Damian Voss's gaze. He was looking at me, not with his usual indifference, but with a strange concern, a deep understanding that I couldn't explain. His eyes were deep black, as if absorbing all the surrounding light, and for a brief moment, I felt as if I was being pulled towards him by an invisible force. That gaze sent shivers down my spine, but at the same time, it stirred a faint glimmer of hope within me. Hope that perhaps, just perhaps, his presence tonight was not a mere coincidence. Damian Voss's coldness and control had been felt by me since my first days working at his restaurant. I knew he was a powerful man, an underground magnate in California, but I never thought my path would truly intersect with his. My life, since leaving Atlanta, had been a series of long, tiring days, struggling with rent, with mounting bills, with the fear of a past I wanted to bury. I arrived in Los Angeles with an old suitcase, a few $100s in my pocket, and a broken heart. My dream was not the spotlight or red carpets. My dream was simply to survive, to find a little peace for my soul. I had tried to integrate, tried to become a part of this prosperous city, but I always felt like an outsider. The Italian I spoke with Aunt Lena, it wasn't just a language. It was bloodline, memory, the last anchor holding me to my family, to my roots. And now, that anchor was in danger of breaking. Grandma. The image of my grandmother appeared in my mind, her gentle smile, her wrinkled but warm hand stroking my hair, the fairy tale she told in Italian when I was little. All those memories flooded back, making me unable to hold back my tears. I took a deep breath, trying to regain my composure. Customers were waiting, work still had to continue. But I knew, from this moment on, nothing would ever be the same. Damian Voss's gaze, Aunt Lena's words, and the dull ache in my chest all signaled a change about to happen. A change I couldn't foresee, a change that could be destiny, or it could also be a dangerous trap from which I had no escape. I was just a small, weak waitress, standing amidst a world full of traps and powerful men like Damian Voss. And deep down, I knew that my life was about to turn a new page, a page I had never dared to imagine. After my shift ended, when the restaurant was empty and I was clearing the last tables, the manager's dry voice startled me. "Maya Rinaldi, the boss wants to see you in his office." Those words rang out like a clap of thunder in my ears. My heart pounded. A feeling of fear mixed with curiosity arose. Damian Voss. He wanted to see me. Right now. I swallowed hard, trying to maintain composure, though my legs trembled uncontrollably. My steps were heavy as I walked towards his office, a place I had never dared to set foot in. The dark wooden door was closed, like an invitation, but also a warning. When I entered, the room was dark, with only a desk lamp illuminating the large desk. Damian Voss sat there, his gaze still cold and sharp as I had seen before. He said nothing, just motioned for me to sit in the chair opposite him. The silence in the room was suffocating, each second passing like a century. I felt as if I was being seen through by him, every thought, every fear exposed under that gaze. I tried to keep my gaze steady, not revealing any weakness. Finally, he spoke, his voice deep but powerful. "I heard you on the phone earlier. About your grandmother." He didn't ask, but merely stated, as if he already knew everything. I felt a wave of indignation rise within me. He had eavesdropped on me. He had intruded upon my most private and painful moment. But I couldn't say anything, just nodded slightly. He pushed a thick envelope towards me. Inside is a round-trip first-class ticket to Naples, Italy. The flight departs early tomorrow morning. My heart seemed to stop. Plane ticket. To Naples. Where my grandmother was. I looked at him with suspicion, unable to believe what I was hearing. Why? Why are you doing this? I asked, my voice trembling. Damian Voss gave a faint, humorless smile. Nothing is free, Miss Maya Rinaldi. He took out another set of documents and placed them on the table. This is a contract. I need an interpreter for my business trip in Italy, lasting 2 weeks. You will accompany me. In return, I will cover all expenses, not just the plane ticket, but also your grandmother's care. I have hired the best medical team to attend to her immediately. The offer was too tempting, too unrealistic. It was like a dream come true, yet it hit a price I couldn't foresee. 2 weeks. As an interpreter, for Damian Voss. I knew nothing about his work, about the world he lived in. I only knew that it was not a normal world. The absolute control in his words, the way he made the offer like a command, all made me understand that this was not just an invitation. This was a trap, an invisible rope tightening around me. You investigated me? I asked, my voice stiff. His gaze swept over me again, cold but full of hidden meaning. I never work with people I don't know well, Miss Maya. I know about your life in Atlanta, about why you came to Los Angeles. I know about your grandmother, about your financial situation. I know everything there is to know. Each of his words was like a knife stabbing into my heart, making me feel more exposed and vulnerable than ever. He had intruded into my life, into the most hidden corners I wanted to keep secret. My hesitation rose with despair. Grandma was dying. I had no money. I had no other choice. The promise of seeing my grandmother one last time, of her receiving the best care, those were words too sweet for me to refuse. But at the same time, I felt a deep fear. This man, Damian Voss, he was too dangerous. He could easily control my life, manipulate me as he wished. I need time to think, I stammered. He raised an eyebrow, a faint smile appearing on his lips. Time is a luxury you don't have, Maya. The flight departs early in the morning. You can accept my offer, or you can stay here, work at this restaurant, and wait for bad news from Italy. His words were not a direct threat, but they carried a terrible weight, an undeniable cruelty. He had put me in a no-win situation. I stared at the plane ticket on the table, then looked at Damian Voss's deep black eyes. I saw in them a terrifying coldness, but also something inexplicable, an understanding I couldn't decipher. I wondered, was he truly trying to help me, or was this just part of some plan of his? A question I had no answer for. My life had once been controlled by another man, a man who had ruined me. And now, I stood at the threshold of another control, a control that seemed more glamorous, but also far more dangerous. I took a deep breath, smelling the faint scent of cigarette smoke and coffee in the room. I agree. The words came out of my mouth with difficulty, as if I was giving up the last piece of my freedom. Damian Voss nodded, a satisfied smile clearly visible on his lips. Good. You won't regret it, Maya. He stood up, walked around the desk, and stood in front of me. We'll meet at the airport at 4 a.m. Don't be late. I felt his hand lightly touch my shoulder, a fleeting touch that sent shivers down my spine. It wasn't a warm touch, but a mark, an affirmation of ownership. I knew, from this moment, my life no longer belonged solely to me. I had sold my soul to the devil, but it was the only way I could see my grandmother one last time. And that pain, the pain of loss, had overshadowed all other fears in my mind. I had walked into Damian Voss's trap, not because I wanted to, but because I had no other choice. 4 o'clock the next morning, I was at Los Angeles International Airport, my heart pounding in my chest. I only carried a small backpack, packed with a few clothes and the few remaining mementos from my old life. I couldn't sleep last night. All my thoughts revolved around my grandmother and Damian Voss. Was I making a terrible mistake? Was this man leading me down a path with no escape? A sleek black limousine stopped in front of the private jet terminal. The driver stepped out, politely opening the car door. Damian Voss sat inside, his gaze still cold and emotionless. He motioned for me to get in. The car glided smoothly, cutting through the silent night of Los Angeles, taking me to a completely different world. When we arrived at the private jet area, I saw a white private jet already parked, gleaming under the airport lights. It was larger and more luxurious than any plane I had ever seen in my life. As I stepped onto the plane, I was completely overwhelmed. The interior was exquisitely designed with soft leather seats, polished wooden tables, and gold-plated details. A beautiful flight attendant greeted me with a professional smile. "Welcome, Miss Rinaldi. Our flight will arrive in Naples in approximately 13 hours. I sat down in the window seat, looking outside. Damian Voss sat opposite me, a thick leather-bound book in his hand. He said nothing, only occasionally glancing at me. I felt the atmosphere between us was suffocating, heavy. I tried to pretend to relax, but inside I was a jumble of emotions. A moment later, the flight attendant brought me a small bag. "Mr. Voss has prepared a few things for you. I hope you like them." I opened the bag. Inside were a soft silk pajama set, a comfortable tracksuit, and a brand new mobile phone. I looked at Damian Voss, and he just nodded slightly. "You'll need it. Your phone won't work in Italy. And clothes. I think you'll want to be more comfortable during the long flight." The new phone, new clothes, everything was prepared. Even my schedule had been arranged by him. I realized Damian had prepared everything: clothes, phone, schedule. From the moment I accepted his offer, I was completely under his control. I felt a shiver run down my spine. This thoughtfulness, it wasn't care, but possession, absolute control. He didn't ask what I wanted. He simply provided what he thought I needed. "I never work with people I don't know well," Damian said, his voice abruptly breaking the silence, startling me. He didn't look at me, still focused on his book, but I knew he was speaking to me. "I investigated you very thoroughly, Maya Rinaldi. I know about your life in Atlanta, about your relationship with that man. I know about your finances, about the debts you are carrying. I know about your grandmother, about her illness. I know everything." Each of his words was like a knife stabbing into my heart. I felt naked, exposed. He had intruded into every most private corner of my life. I felt a wave of indignation rise within me, but I couldn't say anything. I was just a pawn in his game, a tool for him to achieve his goals. I looked out the window, white clouds drifting by. Amidst the luxury, I noticed this man's coldness and calculation. He was not an ordinary man. He was an accumulator, a predator. And I was his prey. "What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice trembling, almost a whisper. He finally looked up, his deep black eyes looking straight into mine. "I already told you. I need an interpreter. And you have that ability. Your Italian is very fluent. That's all I need. For now." He emphasized the word "for now," like a warning, a promise of things yet to come. I didn't believe him. I knew there was more to it. This man never did anything without a purpose, never spent a single penny without a plan to get it back many times over. I was a part of that plan, but I didn't know what role I played. The flight was long and tedious. I tried to sleep, but couldn't. The image of my grandmother and Damian Voss's cold gaze kept haunting me. I read a book he had left on the table, an English novel, but I couldn't concentrate. Every word, every sentence became meaningless. I kept staring at Damian, trying to decipher him, trying to find some crack in the cold wall he had built around himself. Occasionally, he would hand me a document, complex economic papers in Italian, asking me to translate. I complied, trying to maintain professionalism, although I didn't fully understand the meaning of those economic terms. But I understood one thing. His world was a world of money, power, and secret dealings. I remembered my life in Atlanta, the toxic relationship I had tried to escape. He was also a man of power, but his power was emotional manipulation, mental control. Damian Voss was different. He controlled with money, with cold calculation. Both were captors, but their methods were completely different. And I had fallen into a trap once again. In midair, I felt suspended, weightless, without a refuge. This luxurious plane, it was not a safe place. It was a gilded cage, and I was the bird trapped within it. I didn't know where I was going, didn't know what I would have to face. I only knew that my destiny was entirely in the hands of the man opposite me. And I, Maya Rinaldi, a small waitress, was facing a world too big, too dangerous. I only hoped that my grandmother would still wait for me, hoped that I would be able to see her one last time before it was too late. Fear and hope tore at my heart, creating a symphony of anxiety and unease. As the private jet landed at Naples Airport, Italy, I felt a familiar warm air fill my lungs, carrying the scent of the sea and motherland. Tears welled up, a feeling of relief mixed with anxiety surged. I had arrived in Italy. I was close to my grandmother now. But at the same time, I still felt the heavy presence of Damian Voss beside me. He was a cold wall, separating me from the outside world, and also the one who had brought me here. Another luxurious car was waiting on the tarmac. We didn't go through the regular airport area, but were taken directly out of the airport via a private exit. Damian Voss's discretion and power were clearly demonstrated in every action, every smallest detail. I sat next to him in the car, trying to breathe deeply, to relax my soul upon returning to my homeland. The trip from Naples to Sorrento along the Amalfi Coast was a picturesque journey. Winding roads, with steep cliffs on one side and the sparkling blue sea under the sun on the other. Ancient villages, lush green lemon groves, all possessed a captivating beauty. But I couldn't fully enjoy the scenery because my heart was still filled with too many thoughts and worries. We arrived at a villa situated on a cliff overlooking the Amalfi Bay. It was vast, ancient, and incredibly luxurious. Towering fences, intricately carved iron gates, and a large garden with ancient olive trees. As I stepped inside, I felt like I was entering another world, a world of wealth and power that I never thought I would touch. "Your grandmother is here," Damian Voss said, his voice deep, but still carrying an inherent coldness. "I brought her here this morning. A medical team from Germany has arrived to care for her." My heart pounded. My grandmother was here, in this luxurious villa. I rushed upstairs, following the direction Damian indicated. When I entered the room, I saw my grandmother lying on a large, pristine white bed. Her face was pale, but her eyes still shone with their familiar gentle look. Immediately, I knelt beside the bed, taking her wrinkled hand. "Grandma, it's me. It's Maya." My tears flowed incessantly. My grandmother smiled weakly. "Maya, you've come home." Her voice was weak, but still full of love. I hugged her tightly, feeling the warmth from her body, breathing in her familiar scent. In that moment, all fears, all worries vanished. I only wanted to be with her, to make up for the months of separation. I spent that whole day with my grandmother, telling her about my life in Los Angeles, although I omitted the most difficult details. I read books to her in Italian, sang lullabies she used to sing to me when I was little. The private doctor from Germany, a tall man with silver hair, visited her regularly, checking her health condition. He said that her condition had stabilized, and she might live for a while longer. It was a miracle that Damian Voss had brought to me. In the following days, I began my work as an interpreter. Damian Voss had many meetings with Italian business partners. They were powerful financial magnates, men dressed in expensive suits and speaking in complex economic terms. I sat next to Damian, translating every word, every conversation, trying to grasp every nuance in their communication. Damian Voss never explicitly talked about his work. He only spoke of investments, mergers and acquisitions, stock market. But I understood that everything was much more complex. He was a shrewd man, an old fox in the business world, and I, inadvertently, had become a part of his plan. During partner meetings, Maya translated, inadvertently helping Damian grasp important information from the Italian financial magnates. I didn't mean to, but with my fluent language skills and keen perception, I caught small details, slips of the tongue, nonverbal cues that others might miss. I relayed everything to Damian, not realizing that I was inadvertently providing him with significant advantages in negotiations. The relationship between me and Damian Voss gradually became ambiguous. There were times when he showed unexpected concern. He asked about my grandmother, about my memories in Italy. He even brought me my grandmother's favorite dishes, traditional Neapolitan foods I hadn't eaten in years. Those small actions confused me. He was a captor, but also someone who had saved my grandmother. He was cold and calculating, but also had a touch of warmth and humanity. One evening, as I was sitting next to my grandmother, reading to her, Damian Voss entered the room. He said nothing, just stood there watching us. His gaze held something different, something softer than I had ever seen. "Your grandmother is very beautiful, Maya," he said, his voice deep. "You resemble her greatly." I was surprised and a little flustered. "Thank you," I said. He sat back down in the chair, not taking his eyes off my grandmother. "Are you happy, Maya?" That question caught me off guard. Happy. I hadn't thought about that word in a long time. I looked at my grandmother, at her peaceful face, and I felt a little happiness creep into my heart. I'm happy to be with my grandmother," I said. "I don't know how to thank you for this." He just nodded. "No need to thank me. You're doing your job. And I'm doing mine." But in his words, I felt something that wasn't just about work. An invisible bond was forming between us, a bond I couldn't name. It wasn't love, but it wasn't entirely hatred either. It was a complex mixture of dependence, trust, fear, and something inexplicable. He protected me. He worried about me. He didn't allow me to go out alone, always accompanied by bodyguards. At first, I felt confined. But gradually, I realized that it was also his way of protecting me. Protecting me from his enemies, protecting me from the dangerous world he lived in. But this protection also came with a sense of possession. He wanted to know where I was, what I was doing, who I was talking to. He controlled every aspect of my life, from the phone I used to the places I could go. I was his, in a way, a precious gem he held tightly in his hand. One evening, as I was walking in the garden, Damian Voss came to my side. We walked side by side in silence, with only the chirping of insects and the gentle lapping of waves from the distant sea. "Do you remember your life before, Maya?" he asked. I nodded. "I do. Sometimes. I wish I could go back, but I know that's impossible." "Why impossible?" "Because I've changed," I said. "And my world has changed too. I'm no longer the small, anonymous waitress. I am yours, Damian Voss. I've been drawn into your world." He stopped, turned to look at me. In the darkness, his eyes gleamed with a complex expression. "Do you regret it?" Regret. That question echoed in my head. I looked at the star-filled sky over the Amalfi Bay, and I thought about what had happened. I had lost my freedom. I had been pulled into a world full of danger. But I had also saved my grandmother. I had lived in luxury I had never dreamed of. "I don't know," I said, my voice as honest as possible. "I only know that I had no other choice. And now, I'm here, beside you. I don't know what will happen next, but I will face it." He said nothing more, just reached out, gently touching my hair. It wasn't a romantic touch, but a touch of possession, of acceptance. In that moment, I understood that the relationship between us had gone far beyond a work contract. It had become an invisible bond, a destiny neither of us could escape. And I had begun to accept that. Accepting this new life, with all the complexities, dangers, and ambiguous emotions it brought. I didn't know if Damian Voss was protecting me or possessing me. Perhaps he was both. It was an evening in Rome, an April night. Damian Voss had taken me to a luxurious art party at an ancient villa, hidden among the cobblestone streets of the Italian capital. Sparkling lights, melodious music, expensive artworks displayed everywhere. I wore an emerald green evening gown, my hair styled in an updo, feeling like a princess who had wandered into a fairy tale. But deep down, I still felt a vague unease. Damian's world always harbored unforeseen dangers. Damian Voss stood beside me, his hand gently placed on my waist, a gesture that seemed intimate but was full of possession. He introduced me to other powerful men, financial magnates, art collectors. I smiled, shook hands, translated complex conversations about economics and art. I felt myself integrating into his world, becoming a part of it, although I always remained an outsider deep down. Around midnight, when the party was at its liveliest, a piercing siren blared, shattering the peace of the event. "Financial police? Everyone stay where you are." A loud shout echoed throughout the villa. People began to panic, screams, the sound of glasses breaking. Damian Voss immediately gripped my hand. His eyes became sharper, colder than ever. "Let's go, Maya." He pulled me along, through the chaotic crowd, towards a secret escape route I had never known. "What's happening?" I asked, my voice trembling. "My enemies," he said, his voice stiff. "They tipped off the police. They want to bring me down." We fled into the night. Damian Voss led me through narrow alleys, through dark gardens. He knew every path, every corner of Rome like the back of his hand. I tried to keep up with him, my heart pounding in my chest. Adrenaline coursed through my body, making me feel both terrified and strangely exhilarated. While fleeing, he constantly checked our surroundings, ensuring my safety. He held my hand tightly, not letting go for a moment. I felt the strength in his hand, a strength that was both protective and confining. When we reached a waiting car on a deserted road, Damian pushed me into the back seat. He sat beside me, panting. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice sounding a little different, a little softer than I had ever heard. I nodded, trying to catch my breath. "Yes. I'm fine. And you?" He didn't answer, just stared at me. In the dim light of the street lamp, I saw a different expression on Damian Voss's face. A tired, tense, and somewhat vulnerable expression. "You are my only weakness," he confessed, his voice deep and full of emotion. Those words were like a clap of thunder in my ears. "You are my only weakness." Not money, not power, not his empire. But me. I looked at him, unable to believe what I had just heard. I, a small waitress, was the weakness of Damian Voss, the most powerful magnate in California. What did that mean? Did it mean he truly cared about me? Or was it just another way for him to control me even more? "Why are you saying that?" I asked, my voice trembling. He took a deep breath, then looked straight into my eyes. "Because since I've had you, I'm no longer the iron-willed man I used to be. I worry about you, worry about your safety. And that, it makes me weak." His confession confused me. I didn't know how to feel. On one hand, I felt a little warmth creep into my heart. He admitted that he cared about me, in a way. On the other hand, I also felt a deeper fear. If I was his weakness, then I was also a target for his enemies. "To protect you and your grandmother," Damian said, his voice more resolute, "we will go to Switzerland." Switzerland. I was surprised. Switzerland? Why? I have a villa there, he said. A safer place. A secret fortress. No one can find us there. Throughout the trip to Switzerland, I thought a lot about Damian's confession. You are my only weakness. Those words kept echoing in my head. I didn't know if it was a declaration of love or a warning. But I knew one thing. My life was no longer my own. I had been completely drawn into Damian Voss's world, into his power struggle. When we arrived in Switzerland, I saw another villa, nestled among snow-capped mountains. It wasn't as glamorous as the villa in Italy, but it exuded a sturdy, solid appearance. I felt like I was stepping into a completely different world, a world of mystery and danger. My grandmother had been safely brought there. Damian had arranged everything perfectly. The private doctor continued to care for her. I still spent time with her, reading and talking to her. But deep down, I knew that my life was no longer a normal life. I had become a part of Damian Voss's world, a world full of secrets, conspiracies, and dangers. One evening, as I was sitting alone in the villa's library, I found an old diary. It was my grandfather's diary. I was surprised, not understanding why it was here. I opened it and began to read. Each old page, each line of my grandfather's handwriting, contained secrets I had never known. In the diary, my grandfather had written about his relationship with Damian Voss's father. They were not just business partners, but also close friends. But then, a major incident occurred. A failed business deal, a huge debt, and a mysterious death. Damian Voss's father had died suddenly, and my grandfather, according to what he wrote, had felt an immense burden of guilt. A blood debt between two families, my grandfather had written. A debt that our descendants will have to bear. My head spun. Blood debt. So this was the real reason Damian Voss approached me. Not because my grandmother was seriously ill, not because he needed an interpreter, but because of an old debt, a long-standing feud between two families. I had been deceived. I had been manipulated. A feeling of betrayal surged within me, stronger than ever. I slammed the diary shut, my heart pounding in my chest. I ran to find Damian. He was sitting in his study, looking out the large window. You knew about this, didn't you? I asked, my voice full of anger and pain. You knew about the debt between your father and my grandfather, didn't you? Damian turned, his gaze holding something different. He wasn't surprised, didn't deny it. Yes, he said, his voice deep. I've known for a very long time. And that's why you approached me, isn't it? I asked, tears welling up. You used me, used my pain to seek revenge, to repay your family's debt. He stood up, walked towards me. Initially, yes, he confessed, his voice full of remorse. I wanted to learn about your family, about what happened. I wanted to find justice for my father. So I was just a pawn in your game, I said, feeling my heart break. You deceived me. You used me. He reached out, gently touching my cheek. No, Maya. It's not like that. He looked straight into my eyes, his gaze full of sincerity. Initially, I approached you because of that debt. But then, I met you. I saw you, a weak but strong girl, a girl with a kind heart and a radiant soul. I fell in love with you, Maya. His confession echoed in the room, leaving me stunned. Love. He said he loved me. This cold, cruel man, he said he loved me. I didn't know whether to believe him or not. I had been deceived too much. I know you don't believe me, he said, his voice mournful. And I can't blame you. I've done terrible things. But my feelings for you are real. I tried to deny it, tried to fight it. But I couldn't. You changed me, Maya. You made me a different man. My tears still flowed, but this time it wasn't just tears of sorrow. There were also tears of confusion, of faint hope. I looked at him, into his deep black eyes, and I saw in them a sincerity I had never seen before. At this moment, I received news from Aunt Lena. My grandmother, she had passed away. She passed away peacefully, in her sleep, after having seen me one last time. The pain of loss struck, but it was no longer the pain of despair. She had passed away in peace, no longer suffering. Before she passed, my grandmother had said one thing to me, a saying I would never forget. Beware of powerful men, they love with shackles. That advice was like a warning, a reminder of Damian Voss's nature, of the world I was living in. I spent many days thinking, facing the truth, listening to my heart. I looked at Damian Voss, at his complex character. He was a dangerous man, a manipulator, an enemy, but he was also the one who saved my grandmother, who gave me the chance to be with her one last time. And he said he loved me. I had made my choice. I chose to stay. I accepted the darkness. I accepted Damian Voss's world. But this time, it was my own choice. Not because of coercion, not because of despair, but because I wanted to. I wanted to find out if his love was real. I wanted to see if I could find happiness in this dangerous world. I looked at Damian Voss, my gaze steady. I will stay, I said. I will stay by your side. But you must promise me one thing. You will never deceive me again. He nodded, his eyes full of relief and gratitude. I promise, Maya. I will never deceive you again. I will protect you from everything. He held me tightly in his arms, a strong yet gentle embrace. In his arms, I felt a little safety, a little peace. I knew the road ahead would not be easy, but I was ready. I was ready to face everything, together with Damian Voss. 1 year later, my world had completely changed. I was no longer the small waitress Maya Rinaldi, struggling with life in Los Angeles. Now, I was Maya Rinaldi, the woman standing beside Damian Voss, the woman who had conquered new heights with him in the global financial empire. That year was a long journey, full of challenges and dangers, but also rich with lessons and growth. Damian Voss, in that year, had cleared out his enemies. He had removed all obstacles in his path, rebuilding his empire stronger than ever. I had witnessed him do it, witnessed him fight, witnessed him win. I had been by his side in the darkest moments, and I had also shared joy with him in resounding victories. I became the woman standing beside him in the global financial empire. I was no longer just an interpreter. I learned to understand his world, about numbers, about complex transactions, about market tricks. I learned to analyze information, to give strategic advice. I became his right hand, the only person he fully trusted. I participated in important meetings, met the most powerful financial magnates in the world. I wore expensive suits, spoke in languages I never thought I would master. I was no longer a pawn in his game. I was a queen, a chess piece with power, with her own voice. My life was lavish, splendid. We traveled all over the world on private jets, stayed in the most luxurious hotels, ate the finest food. I had everything a waitress once dreamed of. But I knew, behind that glamour, dangers always lurked. Our love, it wasn't like fairy tales. It wasn't safe. It was always surrounded by darkness, by secrets, by lurking enemies. I knew that. Damian Voss was still a powerful man, a man who could control everything around him. And I was still his weakness. But that love, it was real. I felt it in his every touch, in every gaze he gave me, in every word he uttered. He loved me, not because of the old debt, not because I was a tool, but because I was me, Maya Rinaldi. And I also loved him. I loved his complex character, loved his strength, loved even the darkness in his soul. I had accepted that darkness. I had chosen to stay. I had chosen to love a powerful man, a man who loved with shackles, as my grandmother had said. But I knew that those were shackles of my own choosing. I was no longer a victim. I was the architect of my own destiny. I looked out the window, gazing at the bustling city below. I had come a long way, from a waitress in Los Angeles to the woman standing beside a global empire. My life had changed dramatically, and I had paid no small price. But I had no regrets. I used to be a waitress, now I serve an empire. But this love is the sweetest sentence I have ever received.